For 12 long years she walked a road full of pain and loneliness. As a woman of blood flow, her condition made her seen as impure by society. The rejection that was isolated in a world of shadows, where faith was his only company. Even when everything seemed to collapse, hope in the gospel and in Jesus illuminated his way. Each dawn brought the weight of a journey marked by exclusion and prejudice. Jewish society saw it as an alien being, a reflection of impurity and rejection. However, their perseverance and resilience demonstrated the strength of a living biblical story. The longing for transformation pulsed in his heart, challenging pain with renewed faith. In the silence of his days, the desire for a miracle mingled with the incessant search for healing. She dreamed of a divine touch that rescued her from sadness and restored her identity. Confidence in God propelled her to believe that even in adversity salvation was possible. His journey was an example of perseverance, showing that faith can move mountains and turn lives. With each step, she faced the judgment of a crowd and the look of disapproval. Despite the loneliness and the label of impurity, he sought in faith the dignity that was denied to him. Between the whispers of Jewish society and the looks of the crowd, his spirit remained firm. This trajectory of faith and perseverance inspires us never to give up, even in times of greater rejection. In search of healing, she surrendered to the treatments offered by doctors, depositing all hopes in the miracle of medicine. He spent all his economies expecting science to bring the long-awaited healing. However, the blood flow woman faced the stigma of being seen as impure by Jewish society. Between diagnoses and formulas, rejection was present, and the miracle seemed increasingly distant. Amid a multitude of consultations, she felt lost, surrounded by treatments that promised transformation. Each exam and therapy reinforced the sense of exclusion, leaving it invisible in the eyes of the world. Even with the typical resilience of its biblical history, the results were unpleasant. Faith was still its refuge, a brilliance of hope that challenged all rejection. Each new treatment seemed a divine touch that never arrived, intensifying its sense of abandonment. The incessant pursuit of salvation made her wonder if she would ever find the cure promised by the gospel. In his hours of doubt, he remembered the words of Jesus, who inspired perseverance and faith. Even in adversity, hope persisted, announcing that the transformation was at a touch to materialize. Exorbitant spending and the failure of treatments drained not only their finances but also their dignity. She was helpless, as if life rejected her in a sea of impurity and exclusion. However, confidence in God remained firm, supporting it with the promise of a miraculous touch. She was still determined to fight for a restored identity, waiting for the miracle that would transform her reality. Amid the darkness of hopelessness, a news traveled the alleys and alleys: Jesus was passing. The woman of blood flow, exhausted from suffering so much, felt something different in her heart. He had heard of the miracles, healings, the compassion he demonstrated to the most rejected. And then, a flame of faith lit inside her, perhaps for the first time in years. He glimpsed a way out. Faith often begins as a whisper within us, a voice that challenges our reality. She had no guarantees, no direct promises, but she had a conviction a touch would be enough. The gospel teaches that hope is reborn when we trust God, even when everything seems lost. This is exactly what happened to that woman, whose heart was now throbbing with renewed confidence. Imagine the scene: a woman rejected by Jewish society, weakened, but moved by an unshakable desire. She didn't know if Jesus would notice her, if the crowd would stop her, but decided it was worth the risk. This is the power of faith. Does not require concrete evidence, only the certainty that God can act at any moment. The resilience that supported her for 12 years now boosted her to take a step of courage. How many times in our lives do we feel there is no solution anymore? That everything has been tempted to no avail? This woman teaches us that when human resources fail, faith can still make ways. Not only did she hear about Jesus, but decided to trust, believing that a simple touch would change everything. And with this confidence in God, she left towards her encounter with the miracle. The crowd around Jesus was immense, compressed, full of people looking forward to their attention. Each one carried their own pains, their own needs, but that woman had an extra obstacle. Its state of impurity, according to Jewish society, made any contact with others prohibited. Still, she did not hesitate. Her faith was greater than fear, her hope greater than shame. Imagine the dilemma to expose yourself to judgment and the risk of being humiliated or remaining invisible without the chance of healing. How many times do we feel like this, paralyzed by the fear of rejection, attached to the opinions of others? But that woman made the decision that would change her life move forward without looking back. She squandered among people, determined to play at least the edge of Jesus' robes. With each step, her heart accelerated, but her faith propelled her to continue. She didn't know if anyone would recognize her, if she would be kicked out, but she was sure she needed to try. Often, our victory requires the courage to get out of the comfort zone and face barriers. This woman teaches us that even when everything seems against us, an act of faith can lead us to the miracle. How many of us fail to seek our healing, whether emotional, spiritual, or physical, for fear of what others will think? The blood flow woman shows us that faith does not expect conditions to be ideal. She acts in the midst of chaos. Even in the face of rejection and the multitude, she moved on with confidence in God and a burning desire for transformation. The decisive moment was near, and a single touch would change your life forever. She was finally there before Jesus, even anonymously in the crowd. With trembling hands and rapid heart, she extended and touched the edge of her robes. It was a subtle moment, a touch no one else noticed but carried all his faith. And at that very moment, something incredible happened. The body felt the instant healing. For 12 years she carried weakness, pain, and humiliation of a marginalized life. But in a single touch, this whole story has changed. The flow of blood ceased immediately. There was no complex ritual, no magic word, just an unshakable faith in Jesus. The force that came out of him was sufficient to transform his reality and restore his dignity. How many times do we seek complex solutions when the answer is in a simple act of faith? This woman teaches us that we do not need long speeches to achieve the miracle, only confidence in God. The power of healing was available, but it was his decision to play that activated the miracle. Thus happens to us. What separates us from change is often just a step of courage. Imagine the emotion that traveled your body when you realize it was finally free. She would no longer have to live on the sidelines, hidden, rejected by Jewish society. His touch in Jesus' robes was not only physical, but a touch of hope, perseverance, and salvation. Little did she know that, besides healing, Jesus would give her something even greater, a new identity. The miracle happened in silence, but Jesus felt something extraordinary. Some had played him differently. In the middle of the crowd that pressed him on all sides, he stopped and asked, "Who touched me?" The disciples were confused. After all, everyone was touching him. "What do you mean, ask that?" But Jesus knew it was not any touch, it was a touch of faith, a touch that extracted him. The woman, hearing the question, felt a mix of fear and reverence. Its plan was to go unnoticed, receive healing, and return to anonymity. But there is no real encounter with Jesus and remain hidden. She would need to take a step further, the step of courage, to reveal herself before everyone. How many times do we want to receive blessings without exposing ourselves, without taking our faith publicly? This woman teaches us that healing is not only in the physical miracle, but in complete transformation. Jesus did not just want her to be healed, but had her dignity restored. So he insisted he would that she got up, that her story be told. Tremendous but determined, the woman approached and fell at the feet of Jesus. Before the crowd, he told his story, his pain, his touch of faith, and his miraculous healing. She was no longer a rejected woman, no longer an invisible now. She was a living witness of the power of God. And Jesus, with his gaze full of love, had something powerful to say to her. With the crowd in silence, everyone awaited Jesus' response to that woman. She, hitherto rejected, impure in the eyes of society, was now there, exposed before all. But instead of rebuke or contempt, Jesus looked at her with love and said something unexpected. "Daughter, your faith saved you. Go in peace and get free from your evil." Mark 5 verse 34. Daughter. This word sounded like a restorative hug, a seal of belonging and dignity. 4 years she was only the woman of blood flow, an unnamed or identity excluded. But Jesus not only healed her physically, he restored his soul and his position. With a single word, he showed that she was not impure, but loved and accepted by God. How many times do we carry labels that define us for our past or our pains? The gospel teaches us that for God we are not our disease, our mistake, or our weakness. We are children and daughters, beloved and called to live in fullness. This woman entered the crowd as someone rejected, but came out as the king's daughter. The rejection of Jewish society had no more power over it, for Jesus returned his true identity. This is what happens when we approach him. He calls us for what we really are. With this word, Jesus showed that salvation and restoration go beyond physical healing. Now that woman could walk in peace, knowing that her life had been completely transformed. The woman who previously lived hidden now walked with her head up. The rejection and impurity that marked it had been in the past, replaced by dignity and belonging. She was no longer the one who suffered in silence, but a living testimony of the power of faith, which for 12 years seemed impossible. It happened in a moment by the touch of Jesus. The transformation was not just physical, she was restored in every aspect of her life. Where before there was ashamed, now there was confidence. Where there was pain, now there was joy. Its story would no longer be remembered as a report of suffering, but as a symbol of hope. How many heard their testimony and were inspired to seek their own healing and salvation? This teaches us that when we have a true encounter with Jesus, our life will never be the same. Not only does it solve our momentary problems but gives us a new identity. The touch of that woman in Christ's robes changed her existence forever. And today, this same faith can transform any situation, bringing healing, renewal, and a new story. If that woman had given up, if she had accepted the rejection as her destiny, none of this would have happened. But her perseverance and trust in God led her to experience a miracle that the multitude would never forget. His journey challenges us not to give up, to move on, believing that a touch of faith can change everything. And the big question is, what will be your step of faith today? For 12 years she lived an endless nightmare, a condition that made her invisible, impure, and rejected. All human resources failed and hope seemed only a distant memory. But one day something has changed. A simple touch, an act of faith, and your life has been completely transformed. If you have already felt stuck in a dead end, this story will show you that there is still hope. The woman's history of blood flow teaches us that faith can change any situation. Even when everything seemed lost, her perseverance took her to Jesus, and a touch was enough to transform her life. This challenges us to ask, have we sought God with that same confidence? How many blessings are in our reach, waiting for only one step of courage to be received? Just as she had to face the crowd, we often need to overcome obstacles to reach our victory. Perhaps fear, doubt, or even the opinion of others are preventing us from living the miracle God has for us. But the good news is that Jesus remains the same, ready to restore, heal, and transform us. The question that remains is, what will be your step of faith from today? If this story has touched your heart and made you reflect, share it with someone who needs this message. Many people are living like that woman before the miracle, not knowing that healing is so close. Do not keep this hope just for you. Spread that word and inspire others to touch Jesus by faith. And if you want to keep learning more about faith, miracles, and spiritual growth, we have something special for you. Subscribe to the channel and enable notifications so as not to miss any content like this. Here you will find messages that strengthen your faith and show you how to live biblical prosperity in practice. Together, we will continue this journey of learning, transformation, and miracles. We see each other in the next video. God bless you powerfully.